The factory lights were still off when the first train of the morning arrived, creaking like a wounded animal, bringing with it more steel, more parts, more tired men who knew that every minute lost cost lives on the other side of the ocean. The cold California wind swept between the metal sheds, and each door seemed to tremble as if war itself were breathing behind them. Inside, darkness rested on silent assembly lines, unfinished wings, fuselages open like exposed ribs, soulless engines, awaiting only the moment to awaken to another day of forging. It was there, in that heavy silence, that the sound that would change the course of the war was born, the distant echo of the Merlin, the British engine that would soon make the P-51 Mustang a living arrow capable of crossing a continent without hesitation. But before that, there was sweat, uncertainty, and fear. The kind of fear that doesn't appear on maps, but that governs every decision, the fear of arriving too late. When the lights came on, revealing mountains of stacked parts like artifacts from a mechanical universe, something else awakened with them, the collective awareness that this place was not just a factory. It was a vital organ of the American war machine. A metallic heart pumping hope in the form of aluminum, nitrocellulose, and precision. Every day, hundreds of hands became interpreters of a project too audacious to be real, too fast to be allowed, too necessary to fail. The first worker arrived at his post. He ran his hand over the cold surface of one of the wings, feeling the dew mixed with the dust. There, in that touch, was something almost human, a silent plea for that machine to survive far away, in foreign skies, facing tracer bullets that forever scarred the eyes of those who saw them. He remembered his brother, who had disappeared months before, and wondered if it was a plane like that one that could have changed the ending of that story. Sometimes, that's what made his hands tremble in the first minutes of the day. The factory sirens announced the start of the workday, and the ground began to vibrate with hundreds of footsteps. Hammers echoed. Rivets snapped like quick, orderly, precise gunshots. The smell of burnt oil mingled with the metallic aroma of cut aluminum. Sparks danced in the air like small man-made constellations, temporary stars illuminating the silent struggle inside that warehouse. Amidst the organized chaos, the line foreman walked with his notepad, knowing that every mistake, every miscalculation, every misaligned hole could mean an invisible death thousands of kilometers away. He had never seen combat. He had never set foot in Europe. But, in a way, he carried more ghosts than many soldiers. Because every piece of that machine, every screw, every curve, represented a life that could be saved or destroyed depending on his decisions. It was a responsibility that wouldn't be erased by the sound of the siren. On the other side of the shed, a young woman in a blue apron carefully guided a newly arrived piece of equipment, checking its integrity. Her hands were steady, but her eyes betrayed short nights and long worries. Her brother was fighting in France, and she worked there as if, somehow, her touch could create a future for him. Perhaps it could. Perhaps the war was, in fact, an endless collection of hands trying to save someone they loved, even without ever seeing them again. The Merlin engines began to be tested. The sound filled the factory like a mythological roar. The walls trembled. Glass vibrated. A deep vibration ran through every soul present there, as if the very air had understood that this was no longer just metal, it was destiny molded into the form of a machine. The heat emanating from the engine was almost human, like anxious breathing. And in the smell of raw gasoline there was something sacred, something that recalled the urgency of the world outside, where entire cities burned and the sky was torn by sirens and fire. The wind surged through the open windows, stirring up dust and carrying with it a distant murmur, perhaps the memory of planes that would never return, perhaps the announcement that others would still need to fly. With each new test, Merlin cried out as if awakening from a deep sleep, learning to live, to fight, to kill. It was an untamed creature, eager to prove its worth in the skies where only courage survived. As the day progressed, the P-51's fuselage took shape. The silver body reflected the ceiling lights as if it were alive, pulsating. The cockpit was installed with surgical precision, each instrument placed as if it were part of the destiny of someone still breathing somewhere far away, unaware that their future was being decided at that very moment. The aircraft's lines were elegant in an almost poetic way, curves that didn't belong on the battlefield, but rather to some ancient dream of freedom. And yet, ironically, it would be used to destroy. To cut a path through clouds full of fire. To traverse storms of bullets carrying screams and memories. When the first aircraft of the day was lowered onto its wheels, an eerie stillness settled over the hangar. As if all the noise, for a moment, bowed before the presence of that newborn giant. The workers took a few steps back, silently observing the creation they had shaped with weariness, hope, and fear. This was not just an airplane. It was a promise. The first time the engine roared in the open air, the sound rose straight to the sky, like a warning. A new predator had been unleashed. The sun reflected off the polished fuselage, illuminating the name painted on the side, chosen by some young pilot who didn't yet know if he would see another sunrise. The plane sped down the runway. Dust rose behind it as if trying to hold it back, to prevent its departure. And then, suddenly, the tires left the ground. The P-51 Mustang soared like a flaming arrow, tilting its metallic body against the wind, as if searching for something far beyond the horizon. Down below, the workers looked up. For a few seconds, their tired faces lit up. It was there, in that patch of sky pierced by a war machine, that their hands found meaning. Because every rivet, every calculation, every drop of sweat, now flew away. The plane made an elegant turn, like a silent gesture of gratitude. And then it disappeared into the clouds, heading towards the war that was devouring the world. No one knew if it would return. No one knew if it would survive the hell that awaited it. But everyone knew a profound truth. In that factory, on that day, in that warehouse that smelled of oil and hope, they had built more than a machine. They had built courage. They had built resilience. They had built the symbol of a nation that refused to give in. And as the engine's echo faded into the distant sky, a silent thought pierced the heart of everyone there. Some planes are fighting for victory. The Mustang was fighting for its memory.